Hey yo, everyone! After a gangbuster start to the PS5 era, Sony's production has essentially grinded to a halt in the past year or so. Yeah, we've had a couple of hits here and there, but not even close to what we were seeing at the turn of the decade. Now, of course, a lot of that can be chalked up to longer development cycles, and it just so happens that COVID also threw a bunch of pacing off, which resulted in a jam-packed 2022 and 2023. Because of those heavy years, PlayStation fans have been patiently waiting to hear what's next for Sony, besides a ridiculously expensive Pro model console, of course. While we only know of a few key titles that are actively being developed, there have been a few reports from the past few months that shed a little light on what the future of Sony is looking like. So today, let's talk about the state of PlayStation and where it looks like it'll be heading in the coming months and years. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Alright, let's get it. Alrighty, so first things first, I'm not going to be talking about the PS6 or any other hardware. The PS5 Pro just came out, and I don't think we'll be seeing the next generation PlayStation for at least 3 years or so. At the moment, we know that Sony has studios working on a few flagship titles, including Insomniac developing Wolverine and Spider-Man 3, Sucker Punch finishing up Ghost of Yotei, and Bungie working on a Marathon reboot. As for unconfirmed titles, we can assume that Santa Monica is working on the next God of War adventure. Guerrilla Games is probably focusing on the Horizon franchise, and Naughty Dog is supposedly working on a few different single-player games, with The Last of Us Part 3 likely being one of them. Out of all of these games, only Ghost of Yotei has an official release window, which is currently 2025. Now, there's a real possibility that we'll get some development updates for their other titles, such as the next God of War or Wolverine, but at the moment, we have no idea what or when we can expect the next big PlayStation game. So, this had me wondering, what the heck is Sony up to? Obviously, game development takes a long time these days, and I already mentioned how Sony's development cycle got kind of mixed up with the jam-packed start of the decade, but there has to be something for PlayStation fans to look forward to, right? And then I remembered this article from IGN from a few months back talking about the Ghost franchise and how Sony is looking to expand their PlayStation IPs into other mediums. So while gamers can look forward to Ghost of Yotei and a bunch of other third-party games, it looks like the foreseeable future will have an uptick of non-video game content. At least until we start to get some concrete information from PlayStation on their other studios. Now, let me be clear here, this is just speculation and a bit of hypothetical fun, so don't take it too seriously, okay? I don't want to sound like a doomer sounding alarm bells because Sony is shifting more attention to film and TV, but this is at least worth talking about, right? Hear me out first. I mean, video game movies and TV shows have been around for a while, but with the resurgence of the genre and, let's be honest here, the actual quality finally being up to par, it shouldn't come as a surprise to see more studios looking into adaptations. Especially Sony, since they are already a major film distributor. This is obviously a priority for the company and appears to have been one for a few years now. Back in 2019, Sony launched PlayStation Productions, which is a company dedicated specifically to video game, movie, and TV adaptations. Since their inception, they have been hard at work with 2 film releases and 2 TV series. The quality is a bit of a mixed bag, but for the most part, all of their projects have been pretty successful. On top of that, they have a crap ton of other projects currently in the works. On the film side, upcoming movies include Until Dawn, Days Gone, Ghost of Tsushima, Gravity Rush, and an Uncharted sequel. The small screen is just as busy with Season 2 of The Last of Us and Twisted Metal, not to mention the upcoming God of War Amazon series and Secret Level. There's also supposed to be a TV adaptation for Horizon Zero Dawn, but that has been delayed indefinitely. That's quite a plateful. While I have no doubt that PlayStation will continue to put out bangers on their consoles, I do get a bit concerned when I think about the actual people behind these projects. I mean, video game adaptations have kind of been pretty crappy in the past, and a lot of people have complained that maybe the directors and the writers behind these shows and movies should actually lean on the knowledge of the developers. And now that we're finally getting that, I'm worried that we might have to pay the price for it. For example, Neil Druckmann, the original game director for The Last of Us, was also credited as a showrunner for the TV show. I'm pretty confident that his direct involvement in the show's production has led to its higher quality and massive success, receiving praise from both fans and critics alike. This is great for the TV and film side of things, obviously, but it's got me wondering if PlayStation is asking too much of its talent. Having to work on The Last of Us and then The Last of Us Part 2 and then do it all over again for TV has gotta be exhausting. Plus, I'm sure Naughty Dog is working on The Last of Us Part 3. Up to this point, it looks like Neil Druckmann is capable of balancing all of these projects, but what about the other game leads? Are the God of War writers going to be scooped up by Amazon to work on the TV show? Will that cause a delay in the next game? What about Ghost of Tsushima? If the movie is going to be a straight up adaptation, then I'm sure the studio is going to want to lean on the developer's insight to ensure the highest quality possible. Would that involvement affect any sort of potential Yote DLC or even pre-production on the next game? And with the news of the Horizon show being delayed indefinitely, it makes me wonder if Sony is going to ask the devs at Guerrilla Games to step in and assist with the show's production. Don't get me wrong, I feel as if Sony will do a good job to balance workload, but if all of a sudden the film and TV side of things start to look more lucrative, I could definitely see them shifting priorities. I mean, let's look at this from a pinheaded executive's perspective. At their core, video games and movies are art. They are created by people with artistic visions who have a story or concept they want to share with the world. The major difference in these two mediums is that one requires active interaction and the other can be consumed passively. As a result, movies and TV shows are a lot more accessible and easier to consume than a video game. You can knock out the entire Last of Us TV series in a day if you wanted, but the game would take quite a bit longer, especially if you want to complete everything. Plus, video games require more attention as you literally control the pace of the game, whereas a movie or TV show is going to keep on rolling regardless if you're even awake or not. So already, movies and TV shows can reach a much broader audience at a more palatable pace. Now, let's look at the behind the scenes stuff. Both video games and movies have extensive crews and production costs, yes, but in the last few years, video game development has begun to match, or in some cases, even dwarf film production. For example, The Last of Us TV show cost around $100 million to produce over the course of about a year, making it one of the most expensive TV shows ever to be made. The Last of Us Part 2, the game, which released in 2020, cost $220 million to produce and took 5 years to develop. Of course, the game sold incredibly well and easily made its money back, but that doesn't change the fact that video game development is far more tedious than film and TV production. So, if you're some bigwig executive at Sony, you might be thinking to yourself, why don't we put more emphasis on our adaptations? The fan base is already there and established, so all we need to do is pump out some hits at a much cheaper rate than video games. Well, Mr. 1%, let me tell you why. Video game adaptations are great when used as a supplement, but not as much when it's the main course. What I'm trying to say is, if you're going to produce an adaptation, it should be of a game that is already in the zeitgeist. These adaptations should work hand in hand with their video game counterpart. If done well, they will drive people back to your games, or in some cases, maybe for the first time. A video game is way more expensive than a movie ticket, so if you play your cards right, you can basically use these adaptations as marketing for your more expensive product, which is of course the original video game. Just look at the Fallout show, for example. A fantastic show that boosted the active player counts and even got some people interested in the franchise for the first time. But if you're gonna half-ass an adaptation or for some reason adapt a game that is no longer relevant, then you're gonna be wasting everyone's time and might even damage your IP or studio's reputation. It's important to include the people who know the source material the best, which is, of course, the original developers, which kinda reflects my concerns from earlier. Look, at the end of the day, I don't want to sit here and say that Sony's IPs are doomed because they're focusing more on adaptations, because that's not true at all. But I do think that how they manage their talent moving forward will shape the future of their franchises. The last thing they're going to want to do is overextend the brain trust behind their best-selling games like a Neil Druckmann. There's plenty of talented writers and directors out there, sure, but if the studio really wants to honor the source material and make an adaptation that is of the utmost faithful, then they're gonna have to loop in the developers. Again, there is a balance to this. I'm just a little nervous that these big studios will begin asking too much of their workers. We already see enough crunch as it is in the video game industry. More work could just as easily lead to lower quality games, or heck, even low quality adaptations if they have to keep bouncing back and forth. If Sony does manage to find the perfect balance, then I think the company will be entering a new golden age for their brand. Great games lead to big hype for their adaptations, which in turn will lead more people back to their games. The most important part, which is much easier said than done, of course, is maintaining that same level of quality throughout all of their different projects. Who knows, maybe if this works out, we'll see more and more quality adaptations. I think we're already starting down that path anyway. But I want to know what you guys think of all of this. What do you want to see next from PlayStation? Are you okay with there being a slower pace of first-party games if it means high-quality film and TV adaptations? Or would you prefer that Sony just focuses on video games exclusively? What other video games would you like to see get the big or small screen treatment? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It means a lot. I appreciate you guys as always, and I'll catch you in the next one.